Ever wonder what really goes on in those New York City Council meetings?
Well, get ready to find out because today we're diving headfirst into the minutes from a particularly interesting one.
That's right. We're talking about the stated meeting from April 18th, 2024. We're going full-on deep dive mode on this one.
Yeah, these minutes, they're like a secret decoder ring into how our city operates.
PDF right here in front of us. It's called NYC Minutes Stated Meeting 2024-0418.pdf.
And trust me, you might be surprised at what these pages reveal.
We're talking heated debates, crucial decisions, the whole shebang.
All those things that directly impact you, our dear listener, as a New Yorker.
So first things first, what exactly is a stated meeting anyway? Sounds kind of formal, right?
It is, in a way. It's basically just a fancy way of saying a regular official gathering of the entire city council.
And when we say the entire city council, we're talking, what, 51 members?
51 all in one room. Can you imagine? They use these meetings to hash out new laws, vote on important stuff, hold hearings, the nuts and bolts of running a city.
And this particular meeting was led by Majority Leader Farias as president pro tempore, right?
You got it. Councilmember Rivera was absent for this one. But what's really interesting is the attendance for this meeting. It was packed.
Really? What's so unusual about that? Don't they usually all show up?
You'd think so, but believe it or not, getting perfect attendance at these things is incredibly rare.
Huh. Okay. So why does it matter? I mean, as long as they're getting the work done, who cares if everyone's physically there?
Well, here's the thing. Attendance records, they're actually a really important indicator of how transparent and accountable our local government is.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. It's like if every single council member showed up for this particular meeting,
Chances are there was something big on the agenda.
something maybe a little controversial even.
Exactly. It's like a giant flashing neon sign pointing to the issues that were just too important to miss.
All right, so let's dive into this packed agenda then. What's first up on this epic city council meeting lineup?
Well, the minutes kick off with something called the consent agenda.
Consent agenda sounds a little, I don't know, dry.
Don't let the name fool you.
Bah!
This is actually where things can move pretty quickly.
Oh, how so?
It's basically a bundle of items that are considered non-controversial, things everyone's pretty much on board with.
So they just vote on them all at once, like a package deal.
Exactly. Think of it as the express lane of city legislation. Efficiency is the name of the game. But don't mistake efficient for unimportant here.
Right, because even if something isn't causing a huge debate, it doesn't mean it's not a big deal for New Yorkers.
Exactly. And this particular meeting, they zip through a ton of resolutions and land use applications this way. We're talking affordable housing, urban development projects, tax exemptions.
Wow, so even the non-controversial stuff has some real impact. But this meeting wasn't all smooth sailing, right? We had some fireworks in there, didn't we?
Oh, absolutely. Remember that packed house, everyone showing up? Things got particularly interesting when the gaming facility text amendment came up.
Okay, gaming facility text amendment. That sounds a little more exciting than the consent agenda.
You can say that again. This amendment was all about potentially changing where gaming facilities are allowed in the city. You'll find it under LU Now, 57 and Res, now 392 in your minutes if you're following along.
So we're talking about things like casinos, right? Bringing more of them to New York City.
Exactly. And as you can imagine, that idea sparked some pretty strong feelings on both sides.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a hot topic. So how did the vote actually shake out?
Well, the amendment did pass, but it wasn't a landslide or anything. The final tally was 35 in favor, 15 opposed.
15 votes against it. That's not insignificant. Tells you right there this wasn't an easy decision for everyone.
Not at all. Clearly some strong arguments on both sides of this one.
All right, so let's break this down a bit. Why all the fuss about gaming facilities? What are the arguments for and against bringing more of them to the city?
Well, on the one hand, you've got the potential economic benefits. More casinos, more gaming centers. That means more jobs.
Right. And more jobs means more people spending money, more tax revenue for the city. Could even give tourism a nice little boost.
Exactly. And you can bet those arguments probably held a lot of weight for council members representing districts that have, been struggling a bit economically.
Yeah, I can see that. When you're facing tough times, the promise of new jobs and a boost to the local economy can be pretty tempting.
Absolutely. But of course, it's not all about dollar signs. there's the other side of the coin to consider, too.
Right, because whenever you talk about expanding gambling, the big concern is always going to be addiction, right?
Exactly. And then there are those concerns about whether it might lead to higher crime rates in the surrounding areas.
And let's not forget about the character of the neighborhoods themselves. Some people worry that bringing in more gaming facilities could change the whole vibe of a community.
You hit the nail on the head. So council members had to weigh all of those potential downsides: the addiction concerns, the crime worries, the impact on neighborhoods against the potential economic benefits.
It's a tough call, trying to figure out what's best for the city as a whole, but also what's best for the people in your district.
It's a classic dilemma. And the fact that the vote was so close tells us that this wasn't some easy, open and shut case for many of these council members.
It really highlights the kind of tough choices they have to make on a regular basis, trying to find that balance.
Speaking of finding a balance, that tension between economic considerations and social impact, it pops up again in the very next split vote we see in these minutes.
Oh, which one are we talking about now?
The vote on the Cadman Towers tax exemption.
Cadman Towers, that's that big Mitchell-Lama housing complex over in Brooklyn.
That's the one. You can find this resolution under LU-972 and Res. No, 379, if you're following along at home.
All right, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of the vote itself, for those of us who need a little refresher, what exactly is a Mitchell-Lama building?
Oh, it's a whole New York City thing. Basically, it's this program that gives developers tax breaks and low-interest loans to build housing that's actually affordable for middle-income New Yorkers.
So like a way to make sure people who aren't rolling in dough can still, afford to live in the city.
Exactly, especially with those sky-high rents we've got here in the Big Apple.
It's a constant battle. So in this case, they were voting on whether to renew a tax exemption for Cadman Towers. And I'm assuming that renewing that exemption would mean keeping rents a little lower for the folks who live there.
You got it. Seems like a no-brainer, right? I mean, who doesn't love affordable housing?
Seriously.
Yeah.
So what happened? Why was this even a close call?
Well, the resolution did pass, 46 in favor, but there were 3 council members who voted against it and 1 who abstained.
Wow. Really? Why would anyone be against a tax break that's supposed to help people afford to live in the city?
That's the million-dollar question. And unfortunately, the minutes themselves don't really dive into the specific reasoning behind those no votes.
So what? We're just left to speculate.
Pretty much. But we can make some educated guesses based on, the usual factors at play in these situations.
All right, lay it on me, detective. What are we thinking?
Well, first off, even when it comes to something like affordable housing that everyone generally supports, council members still have to think about the city's budget, right?
Makes sense. Tax exemptions mean less money coming in, and they've got to balance that against all the other things the city needs to spend money on.
Exactly. So it's possible that those council members who voted no were concerned about a financial impact, even if they supported the idea of affordable housing in general.
It's always about finding that balance. Tough decisions all around.
Another possibility is that maybe they took issue with some of the specifics of this particular exemption.
Oh, you mean like maybe they felt like the terms of the deal weren't favorable enough for the city?
Exactly. Or maybe they felt like there were better, more effective ways to address the need for affordable housing in that specific district.
It's a good reminder that even when it seems like a pretty straightforward issue, there are often a lot of factors at play behind the scenes.
Layers upon layers. And it's up to those council members to weigh all those factors and make those tough calls.
So we've got the gaming amendment, the tax exemption. What else was on the docket for this marathon meeting?
Well, believe it or not, those 2 big votes, they were really just the tip of the iceberg. A huge chunk of this meeting was actually dedicated to introducing new pieces of legislation and resolutions.
Oh, right. Because besides voting on things that are already in motion, they also use these meetings to get new ideas out there. And I bet those new introductions covered a pretty wide range of topics, huh?
You know it. We're talking everything from small business support to public transportation to education.
All right, well, let's hear about some of these new proposals. So many new laws and resolutions makes you realize those city council members really have their work cut out for them.
Tell me about it. It's a lot to keep track of, but hey, that's what we're here for, right?
That's right, we're here to break it down. So were there any introductions in particular that caught your eye?
Well, there's one that really stood out to me. It's in IC. No, 805, the one about creating a business directory specifically for businesses owned by NYCHA tenants.
Oh, yeah, that's a really interesting one. For folks who might not know, NYCHA, that's the New York City Housing Authority. They provide affordable housing to a ton of New Yorkers.
huge part of the city, but it can be tough for NYCHA residents to, get ahead economically. Sometimes they don't have access to the same opportunities.
Exactly. So this directory, it's like giving these entrepreneurs a fighting chance.
Right. It's about giving them a platform, a way to connect with more customers, really contribute to their communities.
Love that. Supporting small businesses, boosting local economies, it's a win-win. What else? What else did they talk about that's going to impact, everyday New Yorkers?
Oh, there was this other one in Tenet. No, 808. This one aims to bring some much-needed transparency to job hunting.
Oh, tell me more about that. That's something I think we can all get behind.
Right. So this resolution, it would require employers to actually include salary ranges in their job postings. No more guessing games.
It's about time. No more sending your resume into a black hole hoping for the best.
Exactly. It's about leveling the playing field, giving job seekers the information they need right up front.
Transparency. We
Yeah.
love to see it. All right, so we've got support for small businesses, more transparency in hiring. Anything else on that list of introductions that jumped out at you?
Oh, tons, but this one, no. 804 is a heavy one, but important. It's about addressing the opioid crisis, specifically expanding access to those opioid antagonists, like Narcan in childcare facilities.
Wow. It's easy to get caught up in all the hustle and bustle of the city, but that one really hits close to home. It's a reminder of the challenges that families are facing all across the city.
Yeah, it really underscores how widespread this crisis has become.
Definitely something we need to be paying attention to. Were there any other introductions or resolutions that really drove home, the sheer complexity of governing a city as diverse and, let's be honest, chaotic as New York City?
This one wasn't an introduction, but the debate surrounding e-bikes, specifically Rue Res 370 calling for banning them from the subway, that one really got me thinking.
Oh, yes, the e-bike debate. Always a hot topic here.
Right, because on one hand, you've got people saying, hey, these are great for getting around, they're environmentally friendly, we should be encouraging this.
And then on the other hand, you've got the safety concern.
Exactly. People worried about fires, accidents in crowded stations. It's a tough one.
It's a classic New York City dilemma, trying to balance convenience, progress, and safety, all within a system that's already bursting at the seams.
It's a balancing act, that's for sure.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here today, from affordable housing to gaming to supporting local businesses. I feel like we've really gotten a crash course in city government just by dissecting these meeting minutes.
And the best part is, this is just scratching the surface.
Right. These minutes, they're like a doorway.
A starting point.
Exactly. For our listeners out there, if you really want to get a feel for how your city operates, don't just take our word for it.
Go see for yourselves. Go to a meeting, read the minutes, contact your council member.
Get involved, because the more you know, the more empowered you are to make a difference.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Wow.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We'll catch you next time when we tackle another topic that matters.